You've landed on The Substance. I'm your host, Philip Marinello, and we're happy to have you here. Whether it's your first time or your 179th time, welcome to The Substance. Here at The Substance, we're looking to have conversations that help us all better appreciate goodness, truth, and beauty. Previous guests include folks like artist Stephanie Stalvey, New York Times film critic Alissa Wilkinson, Reverend Joseph Yu, singer-songwriter John Guerra, and our pal, multi-hyphenate artist Propaganda. This week, as you all know, I am so excited to welcome poet David Gate to the show. David is somebody whose work I've appreciated for a while, but I know my wife and several people in our community have been sharing his stuff for ages. He is a wildly talented guy, and he was out there grinding on social media, and his stuff really blew up, and he's got a wonderful new book. If you listen to this the day it drops, it comes out tomorrow. If you're listening to it later this week, it's already out. Go to your local bookstore, tell them to order it for you, or go to bookshop.org. I believe currently it's 10% off there. Try not to order from the big bad guys, but hey, whatever you need to do to get the book. This is a wonderful book, and I'm so happy to have him on the show. We are excited to share this conversation with you. And a reminder, if you haven't done it yet and you're listening to this on your phone, we invite you to take a quick second, open it up, Spotify, Apple, whatever you're listening to it on, hit that 5-star button for us. And if you're listening on Apple, please take 10 seconds, write a quick review, write a sentence or two about what you like about the show. It helps people find us on the algorithm. And we appreciate you very much. And without further ado, here's my conversation with David Gate on his new book of poetry and essays, A Rebellion of Care. Well, David, welcome to The Substance, man. I appreciate you. I'm glad that we worked this out, agreeing to do this, and really excited to have you on, man.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to talk to your community about my book and about art and about life. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, our community and thoughtful, good, caring people at large. I feel like art has been such a balm and just a needed, like, art is always a necessary thing, but
Absolutely.
in the times we find ourselves now, art has been such a just a lifeline for folks.
Uh-huh. I find that one of the reasons why I've ended up doing poetry as the bulk of my writing is that I just got sick of discourse and analysis and breaking things down and critique and like I'm a critical person and I like discussing and I like all of that, but I, more and more I felt like what was really speaking and cutting through and connecting was words that were more artistic than analysis or discussion.
No, absolutely. And you've built a lot of, like, your platform, as it were. It kind of sucks to talk about things like that, like, oh, our platforms and our audiences and things like that. And I feel like that's obnoxious, but also kind of like part of the thing a little bit
Yeah,
now. But
it's
you
the
have
world.
really kind of carved out your niche, like,
Mm,
built all that primarily through Instagram, right? With your, like, your daily
yeah,
challenge.
yeah. So with Instagram, I started posting in 2021. I had just started a new job, um, at the end of 2020, where um, I felt like if I don't have a creative outlet that is exciting me, I'm going to go insane. And so
Totally.
I I settled on this, and I'd been writing poetry for years, but I'd never shared a single thing. I'd written lyrics many times for in published songs, but had never shared poetry, and so it was a big step out of my comfort zone to do that. And yeah, but Instagram is really where it began to grow for me, and where I began to connect with more and more people, um, and uh, I loved that connection, that um, dialogue with the reader really was a beautiful thing for me. It was so life giving to hear how the words impacted people and encouraged people, and yeah, and I didn't look back. I just kept doing it.
Yeah, when you share things at that kind of pace, you're bound to, and the way social media works, I feel like when it is like social media has a lot of pitfalls and things that I feel like are very unhealthy, but part of what runs it is engagement. So for artists and creators, if you're putting your stuff out there, like if you are doing it regularly at a decent level, like the idea hopefully is that like you will find people that it resonates with,
Hmm.
and that's a beautiful thing. So you've been writing for a long time, and then with the challenge you're like, I'm just gonna put it out there, and as people
Yeah,
kind of organically found it,
yeah,
shared it with their
yeah,
friends, family,
yep.
audiences for some of the large, who were like some of the first like people that made you kind of like raise your eyebrow going, oh, that person followed me or liked my post.
Um, there were there were some very minor celebrities who I remember when I had one poem which is called "Like Every Selfie," which went
That
very
was a big one.
well. It went very. It didn't go huge the first time I posted it. It did later on, but like it, the first time I put, I mean, it was huge for me at the time. Like I gained 1,000 followers, and I had, it got 5,000 likes. It was like way more than anything I had done at the time. And there were a couple of very minor celebrities who ended up following, and like people I'd never heard of, but had you know status or whatever in the real world, and um, yeah, that's what I mean. That opened my horizons really. Like I had no concept that anything would reach that far. Like I really did not think it would reach even the lowest levels of actual, what in my mind were like, actual artists and actual um influencers and things like that. Like it didn't it didn't even hit my radar. Um so that was, you know an eye opener, and was like, oh, if I keep going, then who knows where things will go. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't follow a ton of like poets as it were, but I
Hmm.
know my wife's followed you for a while, and I saw several times. Um, Friend of the show, she's been on a few times, and every now and then I catch up with her. Stephanie Stalvey, who's a
Yeah.
graphic novelist,
Hmm.
artist, she shares your stuff a lot, and she's like, hey, like you should have this guy on and talk about it. And I went through the feed, and I was like, oh, like I got like 100 people, 100 of my mutuals who, and then some of them are like, oh, I've seen some of this stuff, and my wife I think has one or two of your pieces framed, and I'm like, oh, this guy, like, wow, this is awesome, this is great stuff.
Yeah. Stephanie's amazing. um I'm trying to get her to collaborate me with on a print, so she's her
That
artwork
is
is
perk,
is
yeah, words and
is so
pictures,
good.
man.
Yeah. Yeah, she's graphic artist, and um I have one poem that she actually has in her home that I want her to do a print for, and do something. So we're hoping to collaborate on something.
I think that would be a primo like collaboration. So, are you? I know you're an artist. You're in very. Are you a movie guy at all?
Very much so. Yeah. Yeah.
So I've talked with Stephanie a number of times over the years, but my first hook to kind of get her on the show, there's an old horror film called Cat People that has a lot of themes that's like
Hmm.
similar to her work, and I had her on for that. I don't know, a couple years ago. And then we had her on for a few other things as well, and yeah, seeing her stuff develop, I can't wait for her. Like I know it's like done first draft. I'm like, hey, send it
Yeah.
to me. I
Yeah.
can't wait to read it.
I cannot wait for her. She's such a good writer too. This is what I tell her a lot, is that she's not just a great artist, a visual artist, a graphic artist. She's also a really good writer. She makes her her narrative compelling, which is hard to do when it's like your own story, because you kind of just want to tell the truth of your story. But she finds the way of making it um, really interesting for the reader too. So, you know, she's a great writer as well as a great artist.
Well, and you both, and I mean, honestly, frankly, a lot of the people who we have on the show and people who are telling the truth about things in this world as they are, a lot of them are dealing with similar and overlapping and complementary themes, right? Because there's
Mm.
only the whole, like, there's nothing new under the sun, but people who are trying to tell the truth to themselves and tell the truth to their community and live like dignified, like virtuous lives. Like, a lot of us are dealing with the same things. A lot of us who are raised in forms of the church. A lot of us have some of the same baggage that we're working through.
Yep.
You deal with that a lot in your work. So I've your work has blown up, like your actual like written word.
Hmm.
I've only seen you on a few other outlets, and your bio just says born in the UK,
Yeah.
now lives in the mountains.
Yep.
So briefly, we don't need to do a ton of bio, but like what brought you here, like where did you come from, both like physically and spiritually, like
Okay.
your personal and your spiritual bio in a
Um,
couple minutes.
the short version is I grew up in London, in northwest London. Um, as a teenager, found faith for myself. I grew up in a Christian home, but really found it for myself as a teenager. Almost immediately started writing songs. So I would write worship songs. Um, as a teenager, uh, I was very fortunate to have some published when I was 16. And again, that was one of those experiences, like an encouragement experience to make me think like, oh, I could do this. Like, this isn't something that like the most talented people on earth do. This is something,
Yeah.
this is something that I could do. It's within my realm of ability. And so, at that point, I just didn't look back. I just would write and write and write. I'm a natural writer. That's how I process. That's how I want to express. I've always been that way. I want to make things um, and put them out into the world. So yeah, that was kind of where I started. And I would lead worship too, and that was kind of like what I did for work, pretty much. In my throughout my 20s, I was
So
I
you're a
was
professional.
I was a
That's great.
professional worship leader, yeah, and for churches, and then I would also do like the odd conferences and stuff like that. But to be honest, I was a better writer than I was um, performer. I guess we can use that word to describe a worship leader. So yeah, I was a better writer than I was performer. So I would always try and spend as much time in those jobs writing as possible, even though you're meant to be doing all these other things. And then, so in 2011, I got offered a job to be a worship pastor at a church in Jacksonville, Florida. A great church there called River City Church. And I never wanted to move to America. I viewed British worship leaders who came to America as total sellouts, because you can't make any money, doing ministry in the UK. It's just not a I mean, you can get by, but you can't earn a good living in the UK doing ministry, right? Whereas, of course, in America, there's a lot of money.
Which is a
So
problem. You don't
yeah,
really
it's a
want to
massive problem. And what
you
I
don't, you
you know,
don't want
and
to join ministry as a
no,
career
no, no,
path.
and so I viewed everyone who came to America, like of my peers who came to America, as like total sellouts. And I've always been that kind of like anti-corporate. You know, that's the kind of art and music I've always indie alternative. That's where I've been. So I viewed everyone as being a sellout, and then I was like, um, well, I like this church. I'm just going to go and work for them, and so it'll be a fun adventure. It'll be something to do with our kids. Something like the 3-5 years of being in America would be interesting for our kids as well. So we moved. And I didn't hate it. I I got a lot more out of being here than I thought for my own development and own peace of mind. And um, I really kind of settled into the culture here. But I think ultimately Florida was not the place for us, for various reasons. Mainly the heat and just the kind of general culture of North Florida was not. There are great
Florida
people.
is a very hot
Yeah.
place with not a whole lot going
well,
on.
well,
I
there's like
There
I
is,
do
but
defend Florida a little bit. Like Florida is like I could I enjoyed my time there, and I met amazing people there. There were lots of amazing people and loads of amazing businesses and cool things going on in North Florida. But like the overriding outside culture was just a bit too Bible Belty for me and my partner and our kids, and so we wanted to get out of that heat and kind of get out of the kind of pressure cooker Bible Belt religious environment. And so we when we discovered Asheville, North Carolina, was like, this is perfect for us. Like, this is such a beautiful city. Um, it's in the mountains. It's got an incredible art scene, an incredible food scene. Literally one of the best places for beer on the East Coast. We have
okay.
so many breweries, um, and a very liberal, progressive city in North Carolina. So yeah, we decided this was where we wanted to be, and so we came here to start a community, just to do a small house church. We were done by like bigger institutional church at that point in 2016, and then Trump gets elected, and really
Well,
glad about
yeah.
that decision. And so we had a community here, and we went through that, and we went through the pandemic together, and came out the other side and made lots of friends. And but at the end of 2023, beginning of last year, I decided that like me and my partner decided that we didn't want to like take on the responsibility of initiating that and holding it, and there wasn't really anyone else who wanted to do it, so we kind of just brought it to a natural close at the end of last year. So this is like the first time in my entire life that I've not been a part of a community, your spiritual community in real life. Like, so it's been a interesting change. Yeah, that was more than what, a 2 minute
No,
bio.
that was
That was
great.
like an 8 minute bio.
So no, that's exactly what I was looking. So you were in North Carolina since 2016, you said?
Yes.
Man, what a time! Like, we often will have people on the show talking about like the spiritual journeys and the hardships, and I do feel like, I mean, 2020 was crazy, but
Hmm.
2016 I feel like is where a lot of these things, because of the election, were brought, if not to like the very front,
Yeah.
brought to some place where a lot of us couldn't like not see it at a certain point. Like, that's where the rifts really began to form for many of us.
Yeah. And so for me, in terms of my faith, like I would not say I've been on a deconstruction path, right? Because I feel like I've been taking things apart since I was a teenager. So like I was
That is
all.
such a blessed place. Like, I completely like resonate with that, and so often I feel bad because,
Yeah,
like,
yeah. I
I don't
don't.
know
I
how. Like, my mom was very good about. I grew up in a pretty fundamentalist environment, like a more healthy, like not crazy legalistic and crazy political at that time when I was like young and being
Mhm.
formed, but I was just always like, here are the most important things. Be open-minded, think critically, don't just take what people say. And like,
Yeah,
I still am always evolving and I'm growing. Like, we're always reforming ourselves,
yeah,
but I do feel bad sometimes when people are like, "Oh, like
yeah.
everything was ripped away from me," and I'm like, "Dang, like that's
Well,
it's hard."
yeah. Like I never had a particularly rosy-eyed view of where I came from, I always knew there were issues with it, and like just the kind of person I was kind of calling them out when I saw them, or pretty consistently in the places I've been and the communities I've been in. And so which I always put down, and like in the world that I came from, like which is kind of like a charismatic world. Um,
Oh yeah,
as
I heard on one you described yourself as a charismatic Anglican, which
Yeah,
I
yeah,
thought was a really
yeah,
interesting label.
yes, that is exactly where I came from. So the charismatic wing of the Anglican Church in the UK is what I grew up in. Now that is become probably the most powerful part of the Church of England at the moment. Not when I was a kid. It wasn't. It was definitely a more fringe. But now that kind of, particularly the evangelical end of that charismatic spectrum, is really in charge of like pretty much all of the resources and culture in the UK. Um, and so it's quite powerful. And as it grew in power, I became more and more critical of it and more uncomfortable in it. Um, so yeah, so I feel like I've always been taking it apart and taking my faith apart and rebuilding it. I've always been very willing to kind of say unsayable things and think unthinkable things, um, and see if there's truth there. And it's the curiosity for me as an artist. Certainly, like that's always been where I've been led to is things that interest me and things that make me curious. So like I definitely like people. A lot of people assume that like I've been through some kind of deconstruction in the last 7-8 years,
Sure.
but I haven't. Like I have. I've just there are things I have taken apart in the last 7 or 8 years, but like certainly politically, I have always been at odds politically with the kind of evangelical world. I grew up in a left-leaning family, very class aware because in Britain everyone's class awareness is very important. So like very class aware, um, and as I said before, very anti-corporate, anti-capitalist. Um, since a teenager, so I was always kind of on the edge of things in the church world, just because politically I was, you know, unapologetically left and progressive. Yeah.
Well, and I like how in your book, in the intro, in the introduction, you talk about how, and I mean, this is not a new insight and obvious, but framing your art that holistically, all of our lives as we live them as engaged people, like, are spiritual and political because
Yeah.
they're they're lived around other souls, like in a community,
Yeah.
and how we treat each other like is political and spiritual, and how we treat
Mhm.
ourselves, which, like, that stuff is some of the most compelling and touching stuff to me. And I know a lot of our listeners, like, there were a lot of your stuff that has really resonated with them, but I really like being like going on the journeys wherever we are, wherever we came from, and wherever it is we currently are, wherever we're going,
Mhm.
like the way that we allow ourselves to think and to change and to act, like that really is like both spiritual and political. And a lot of folks in the US, like, there's a lot of awkwardness, a lot of fear, a lot of shame. A lot of people haven't been given permission to kind of think for themselves or go outside of any
Yeah.
preset bounds. And that's something that I really love, that art and artists kind of help give people permission
Yeah.
to think.
Yeah. And that's really what I love to do. Like when like I get a lot of compliments about my work, but one of the ones that like really resonates for me is when people say, "Oh, you put words to something I've always thought but never had the language for," and that to me is like such a like that's the goal for me, is to like connect with other people and give them the language to express their own curiosity, their own experience of life, the truth that they know to be true, the values that they hold. So it's one of the reasons why, like in my work, I don't really talk. You know, I there's very very little that you could call theological or doctrine like that. Like that, I really don't touch on the things I believe theologically in my book, but I do talk all the time about values, and so I feel far more comfortable, and I see far more use and connection right now in talking about values and shared values, which is really what the book is about. Is the whole book is about
Totally.
this shared value of care and how that um, impacts us as individuals and how we look after ourselves and our bodies and our minds and our emotions, but also how we look after each other in spiritual communities, how we look after the planet, how we look after our relationships and friendships, how we look after our families, how we engage in the kind of system that we live in, capitalist system we live in. Like all of that is what this book is about. Care is an organizing principle and organizing value. Like that's, you know, what this book is about, and really where I feel like most of my work sits these days.
Well, yeah, and on that note, I also really appreciated and thought it was clever, good writing as an insight, but just as a frame of like we think of when people get active socially and politically and try to do good in the world, like, oh, like what a radical lifestyle. But the way you were kind of tilted that in frame is like, no, like we only have so much time on this earth.
Mm.
And if you're living like in that capitalist machine, like like thinking of that, like shifting,
Yeah,
like that's actually kind of a radical, ridiculous thing.
yeah, and you know, a lot of people, like we have a homestead here. We have an acre homestead, so we're very much in the homestead world, which is kind of like prepper adjacent. You know,
Sure.
we know some preppers, and within that homestead world, you'll get like a lot of like we'll know people who are really into like RFK
Yeah,
Jr.
like the trad wifers and the
Yeah, and then like there's definitely
anti-medicine
yeah,
people.
anti-vax people, yeah, anti-medicine people for sure. Um, and so we do navigate that world a little bit, and but there's this can be this like kind of idealistic thinking about a homestead like we have with chickens and goats, and you know we grow vegetables, and you know we are very lucky to have a large amount of our food comes from our homestead, right? Which we do for all sorts of reasons, primarily um, quality and a little bit of concern about the viability of the American food chain. Also, environmentally, it's just way better as well. So, like, there are many reasons why we do that, and just to be connected to where our food comes from, and we just think it's a very the American food chain is very disconnected from the reality of where eggs and chickens actually come from, and so forth.
Completely.
So we wanted
And
to be
now
a
it's
more
even
yeah.
like gonna be way worse and
No, it's
more
gonna be worse, but
expensive. Like I
yes.
don't know what it's gonna look like a year from now. It
So
might be pretty rugged.
so there's this idealistic view of what we do. Like we know a lot of people who want to do something similar, and or like you know dream of it. And so one of the things I say in the book is that like you can never totally divest. Like you can never totally get out of it. Like in order to do what we do, we have to get things delivered to our house. We have to um, use plastic for some reason that we don't really want to use it for, but we have to. You know, we have to go on YouTube and learn all these things from YouTube.
Totally.
We have to fill our um, lawnmower with gas, and you know that's what we buy from a gas company. Like you can't. There's no way of fully divesting on going totally off grid. Like we remain complicit the whole time, and so it's not about like I can't escape the system, therefore let's not bother. But like that, every act against the system adds up,
Well,
and
yeah.
and it weakens the system itself. And so that's how we think about it.
And that's the rebellion of care.
Yeah.
I like to ask people, and I usually do this at the very top. People who write books specifically, one of the things that our audience and myself, honestly, it probably comes from me, and we get a lot of feedback on it. But I love looking at introductions, especially on
Mhm.
first books. Like, and I mean, usually it's to somebody very close to them and yours. As of now, so the arc, it says it changes. Usually they don't change all that much, but
No, they don't.
to my mother, to taught me how to care and how to fight.
Yeah.
Whatever you're comfortable with. Is your mother still around?
She is. Um, Not in America. She lives in London. So we only really see her about once a year. But um, no, my mother was a nurse. Um, it's her 70th birthday this year. She retired a few years ago. And she was a nurse and a really, really good nurse. Um, and she would uh, be well known within our community for a high level of care, of cutting through the bullshit and getting people the care they needed. Within, like, like the British medical system is, I'm very grateful for that. I wish we had more something similar here.
Yes, that would be great.
But it is bureaucratic, and and there's lots of things to navigate, and there's not as much money as it needs, and all that stuff. And so, but my mum was very good at, like, cutting through the bullshit and getting people the care they needed. But my mother also would. I remember throughout my childhood, she was always haranguing someone in power. like like I remember, like, there being a period of time in the church we grew up in where she was, like, haranguing the leader of the church all the time, and I don't even remember for what reason. I
Just
remember,
to keep him on his toes.
yeah, just give it a toast. And I remember one time when my sister broke her leg at school, and the school handled it badly, and my mum harangued the leadership of the school and the head teacher, and had no qualms about conflict and making enemies with people who were powerful. And as I've got older, I've realized that they are actually two qualities I deeply admire in her, but also really value in myself. And I have walked a similar path in that regard with those two things. Is you know being a thorn in the side of people who have power, and to care for those deeply who need it.
Also, very Christ-like.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yes, I like to. I don't like to say that, like, oh yeah, I guess that I'm a lot like Jesus then. But no, that's very much like the kind of the Christ I come back to is that um, the one who frustrates political and religious leaders. Yeah,
To
and
care for
yes,
the people.
yes,
Yeah.
and is radical in his acts of care, and particularly, like, cross cultural norms. To
Well,
to
yeah.
to get to folks. Yeah,
A lot of people love revolutionary Jesus, but they love revolutionary Jesus because they crave power and
hmm
they crave to be the one in charge, but not seeing revolutionary Jesus as he was revolutionary because he he upended, like you said, the social norms for the sake of helping the
yeah,
vulnerable and the oppressed and
yeah,
the outsider.
yeah, and pretty much moved away from uh, gaining power at every opportunity. Like, really um, did things to lose followers all the time. Did things to confound those who wanted him to be a certain kind of messiah. Um, a political messiah. Like, even though he really upends the political world there in Jerusalem, particularly, he never becomes that messiah that they want. Like does not become the guy they think he is when he comes into Jerusalem, and that week of the Passion is him just constantly walking towards his death. And I've always admired that and thought it was incredibly beautiful. And I'm a Tolkienite
Okay.
when it comes to viewing power. So very much the Lord of the Rings, and that power corrupts, and power corrupts inevitably. I have a T-shirt that says, "What does it say? Abuse of power comes as no surprise." Yeah,
Totally.
it's just the way of things, and so personally as well, like trying to rid myself of all power I hold over people. I hate the feeling of having power over people. It's to me, it's a gross feeling, and so I'm always trying to get rid of it,
I
piss
really
people
do
off.
need to. I really do need to give Tolkien another try. I think I started it too young and then
Yeah,
just never revisited it. But I really would love to love it the way that so many people do.
yeah. I mean, I get like the Calvinists love it, right? Like so, and
A lot of them really do,
no, they
which is
do, they
interesting.
do, they do. It's because they don't understand it, and so.
That's a good quote right there. We're
Yeah,
going to be
a bit
using
like the
that.
Bible too. Like they don't understand that either. So
Yeah.
it's. I understand why a lot of people might shift away from Tolkien just because like I think with anything, the fandom is often the worst part of
Truly.
a fantasy world or whatever, or even
Yeah.
music. Like the fandoms are often the worst part of things, and that's true for Tolkien too. But his message really of power and how power corrupts, um, and that the only way through is friendship and letting go of power is um, brilliant.
Well, thematically, friendship is the next thing I wanted to hit, but I did want to take a quick detour because this is your upcoming book is coming out through Convergent,
Mhm.
which is a sub of Penguin, but this cover here is phenomenal.
Mm.
Did you have a say in that? Did you commission somebody? Did you or somebody in your life make this? Like, this is a gorgeous cover that, like, we do have a lot of covers that are nice, but it's nice when you have a beautiful image that, like, really, really melds with
Yeah,
what's inside.
yeah. I feel like if you like the cover, it's a really good representation of like the tone of the book. And
So
so,
judge this book by its
yeah,
cover.
judge this book by its really beautiful cover. Yeah. No, the illustration is by a guy called Armando Vive, who I had not come across, and the publisher found him. He he has done a lot of work in the New York Times. So if you've ever read the New York Times literary section, like often there's an illustration on the front of that, and he does lots of those. Um, and uh, it was an amazing call from the publisher. They commissioned him to do it, and then he came up with some concepts, and I loved the vase concept, and it. But it kind of looked a little too sad, so I was like, "Can we make it a little more colorful?" And but then it had like this like normal home vase in it, and I was like, "Can we make that look more like an urn?" Like I wanted it to have this.
It does look like an urn.
Yeah, so it has that kind of resonance in it because there's death throughout the book. Like death just
Yeah.
appears, and so like and that that vase has the crack in it.
And a wide variety of flowers in there too. Very
Yes, yes,
diverse.
yes, yeah. It's I think I said to him, uh, I want it to feel like a harvest bouquet, like towards the end of the year bouquet. Like it's not a spring bouquet or a summer bouquet. It's like later on in the story in the year, because of how I kind of feel like we're pretty late on in the story of America. So
Good
like,
night. We
it's
truly are.
and then the ants were his idea, and then bring those in, and I just love that collective feel of the ants, and they're such cute little guys, and so yeah, uh, it was probably one of the things I was most nervous about was the cover, because like you really want it to sing, and you really want it to like represent the work and feel artistic
And as a
and
poet,
so
like,
forth.
you
Yeah.
are in charge of everything, but you're not a cover illustrator, so you
No,
can't be like, "Oh, I got this, guys."
no, exactly. And because like I have taste, like I have artistic taste and things that I lean to, but I'm not a concept artist. Like I can't make it happen, um, and nor should I be. Like it's his skill, and so I kind of gave as little direction as possible. I really wanted and I do this with all my prints as well. Like I don't really give heavy direction. Like I want to collaborate with people that I really like their work and I trust them, and I want them to. And so really, I always say like I just want you to be as artistically invested in this as I am, and um, do work that you're proud of, basically, and I find that gets the best results.
Well, both myself and I'm sure many of our listeners will be there lining up for the David Gates Stephanie Stalvey combo
Yes, I hope
whenever
so.
the day is here. But so, like, friendship and community, that's something that features both on your regular feed
Yeah.
and in the book, and it's really interesting. This is such a lazy, kind of mean nothing phrase, but we know when we say, like, in the times we live in, like, digital communities are important and good, but
Yeah.
digital communities aren't, like, I don't want to demean them, because especially during the pandemic, that's like all that some people had.
Hmm.
So it's not saying that they are not true communities, but they are not full communities, because we are embodied
Yeah.
people.
And I make the point in that there's an essay about friendship in the book, and in that essay, I make the point that um, internet friendships can be brilliant and beautiful, and I say in the book like they have kept me alive at various points of my life, right? And so I am not against that at all. But what I do say is that like the real danger of that is that we then become totally beholden to the tech overlords. So like I know people who had amazing, real robust communities on Twitter, and that
Boy,
was
oh boy.
and now those are that website's dead. Like if you at any point you had like a strong um community on Facebook, like that is now just boomer AI hell. And so
Yep.
and you have to think eventually the ones where I hang out now, which is largely Instagram, but
Yeah,
also
Instagram's a meta.
yeah,
Like, every time I open it up
yeah,
and it says brought to you
yeah.
by Meta, I'm like,
Ugh.
man, Instagram
Right.
is like the one thing I do want to keep. Like, I'm on Blue Sky. Maybe I'll do a Substack at some point. But like, yeah, it is all under the tech overlord banner
Yeah,
at
and
some point, or it gets bought out by them eventually.
yeah, and you just think there's so many ways they can ruin it, and they do. Like there.
Twitter was so good for so long, and
Yeah,
then
it was such
woof.
a you know for I think certainly if you're like dark humor and you like dry humor
Or
and
like
you
writers, like, it was a place where
yeah,
you
oh
could,
my gosh, yeah,
like, cleverness and like, if you like things that are smart and funny or incisive, like, journalists, like independent
yes,
journalism, artists, like, all, like, it was
it
such a wonderful creative space for so
it
long.
it was where I got my news for 5 to 10 years.
And
Like
it's where the best news was, because it was
yes,
all
yes,
independent journalists were there
yeah.
with photo, video, like,
and
prose
and
right
and
there.
and you kind of got more of what that journalist thought than what ended up in their publication. So like
Totally.
you then like would curate your feed according to the journalists you liked, rather
Yeah.
than necessarily the kind of philosophy of us, or
Yeah, of a
outlook
publication owned
of
by
a
a billionaire.
publication
Yeah.
owned by a billionaire. So like, yeah, no wonder they didn't like it, and no wonder Elon Musk bought it to ruin it. Which I'm convinced that it really was bought to manipulate
Yeah, I don't I
the
think
world.
demonstrably he's like, yeah, I need to save free speech, meaning win this election and then like brainwash as many people as I can.
Yeah, and really just destroy the viability of this community that really allow people to think freely. Um, and so it doesn't surprise me that it's dead now. Um, but that is why we cannot rely on only those spaces. Unless you own those spaces, and we don't. Not we can't. So it we have to have in real life friendships. We have to have some connection to the people who live in our vicinity. We have to have um, friends that will be able to look after us, um, it, beyond
We have physical
simply
needs. Like you even mentioned
physical
that
needs.
in your essay, like a Twitter friend in another state or in another country can't bring you a meal when you're sick
No,
or take your kids to school or
no,
whatever.
and like they can't, it, like, so for example, we went through Hurricane Helene hit us really badly in the end of last year, October last year,
Whew.
or September, October last year. And so we were without power, we were without water, any running water for like 6 8 weeks, 8 weeks I think. And then no drinking water for another 6 weeks after that. So for weeks there wasn't any gas here, there wasn't any Wi-Fi, and so we're kind of, everyone is looking out for each other. Like, it really, the crisis brought this rebellion of care, which was just under the surface, and the crisis brought it out. And I saw firsthand that, like, yes, like we can look after each other, and like the authorities showed up eventually, and they brought their helicopters, and like they did a bunch of stuff, but really the actual needs were met by local organizations. And really, and this was very fascinating for me, is that the organizations that were quickest and most able to really meet people's needs in the very early days of the crisis were particularly the trans activists. So we have we have a large trans community here, and they are already set up to look after each other. So like they're already set up with mutual aid funds and the ability to get people emergency resources, and lots of other things like bail bonds and stuff like that. But they were ready to like just go, like, to help not just trans folk, but like whoever in the community needed it. And the churches were not ready. Like, they were way behind. It took them, the churches, a week or two to like
They
really
were not
get
set
up to
up and
speed. No,
primed in the same
no,
way.
not in the same way. And because they're not set up to actually look after people in the same way that these trans communities are. And so um, the trans community really led the way in Asheville in that regard. And the government was even worse. It was like, it was slow and ineffective, and did good things when they got here, but no, really, it was the locals that looked after each other. And so that really made an impact. And so, like, oh, my book isn't just theory, it actually works. Like, we can look after each other, we can choose to do that, and we should.
I also really loved, like, you can kind of intuit some of it with like looking at you, hearing your story, seeing kind of the life you live, and then the work you put out. But talked about some of your journey in your, and I love that you have essays. Like, I am trying to not make myself like it's a chore, but try to engage more with poetry in my mid 30s, and not trying to just read like either super fluffy stuff or super intense, like here's why the world is so broken, like nonfiction. Trying to engage with more poetry.
but I really like it when there are divisions with like, hey, kind of here's what we're going for with this section.
Yeah.
And the essays were very helpful for me. But there was one section, I forget exactly what it was called, but you talked about like the the male journey of
Mm.
like working towards emotional maturity.
Yeah.
And I don't even think that's probably just a US thing. Like Britain, like around the world, I would imagine that,
Yeah.
like especially modern day, the environments that are primarily male dominated. I think you said something like the two things you're allowed to feel is angry and horny, and like that's obviously like a little tongue in cheek, but kind of not that far off.
No, it's broadly true. Like that men are only really allowed to feel horny or angry as like very obvious
Those are
emotions.
the socially acceptable, like those are the
Yes,
things that
yes, that
we
men are allowed to feel.
yeah.
Yeah, and and I probably I don't even say this in the book, but I probably should say actually white men are allowed to feel that. Like black men are not allowed to be angry. It's really white men are allowed to be angry. So yeah, that's what that chapter is about. It's called "I Must Also Feel It as a Man," which is a quote from Macbeth, and um, yeah, it's all about how. I mean, I think a lot of the poems in that chapter also apply to women because they're about emotional health and emotional maturity. There are only really a couple that are specific for men, but really, when I was writing that chapter, it was about my own striving for emotional competency, emotional health, and how important that is, and how vital that is, and how really that if we can have a generation of men that awaken to their own emotional needs and grow, that it would have a huge effect on our society. So that's my hope, is that we can we can move in that direction.
No, it's so desperately and kind of so obviously what so many folks need. And I get so tired to angry to frustrated to I don't know what when I see all these like what did they call Russell Moore back in the election times
Oh yeah,
was talking about like predominantly like people right wing like political folks. He had like conflict entrepreneurs like the loneliness and the angst entrepreneurs for like the men, like the people who are like buy my course, buy my book, like become a patron, like join my thing, and like reinforcing all this negativity primarily with young men, and it's so insidious. And
yeah,
I'm hoping that like art will like do some of this heavy lifting because it's so hard to argue. Like I people who have been my associates out in the world professionally, they'll go like they'll lose a job, they'll have a breakup, what have you, and then 6 months later, they kind of get radicalized by some of these internet personalities, and I'm like, I don't even know how to like talk to you.
yeah. I think a lot. I think people are much closer to it than they realize. I think a lot of these guys, in their 20s and 30s, are closer to a revelation about their own emotional life than they realize. And we joke about it like men will do anything rather than go to therapy and like that
Sure.
kind of stuff. And obviously, I would greatly encourage men of that age to go to therapy. Um, but also, I think even I think about a lot about how poetry is right there in so many of the things they enjoy, but they've not made that connection. So take Breaking Bad for example. So Breaking Bad, is that typical like they, dudes love that show. It's like that and The Sopranos. Like, dudes love Breaking Bad, and rightfully so. It's an amazing TV show. But poetry is throughout that. Like it's the best episode of that TV show is called Ozymandias,
Ozymandias,
and is
yeah.
you know uh, who wrote that? Shelley. Um, it's a Shelley poem, and is very influential on that whole story. Walt Whitman, the Walt Whitman book that Hank finds is absolutely a crucial element to the show. And Walter White, this guy that a lot of these dudes look up to, which you shouldn't, he's a villain, but like is
We talk about that on the show a lot. Like,
yeah,
these are like, there's so much good writing in pop culture where, like, because you are engaged in a good story, you're like, people can really be like, oh, I like these terrible people. Like,
yeah,
Sopranos is one of my, I actually talked about that a few episodes ago. I just started another rewatch, and it's one of the best things ever made. But the people who are like, oh,
yeah.
I love, like, this guy is my guy, you're like,
No,
hey, is a complex human, blah blah blah, worthy of empathy, but don't emulate this. This
no,
is not good.
no. Like, I mean, I remember by the end of Sopranos, I really hated Tony Soprano by the end, and I think you're meant to.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's if you have a conscience, that's where you should end up, and you should feel a sense of like almost like you shouldn't feel good that he doesn't come to justice. Like you should feel like, oh, they get away with it. Like this is how violent, powerful men in America get away with it, and that's how I felt about that. But like again, like another show that has a ton of poetry in is Succession.
Oh yeah.
Like uh, each of the finales of of each season are named after a John Berryman poem, and like obviously they are there's poetry scattered in that thematically in the and a lot of Shakespearean stuff as well in the Succession, and so yeah, like another one of those movies that bros love is Interstellar. Like you talk to a dude in their 20s or 30s, they absolutely adore Interstellar usually,
A
and
lot of them do.
yeah, but right in the middle of that is Dylan Thomas's poem, Don't Go Gentle into the Good Night. And so Rage Against the Dying Light, it's poetry right in the middle, and I want to be able, I think, to be able to say to those kind of bros, look, you already like poetry, right? And if you enter into that world and really study it and really get into it, you could get an awful lot out of it.
Lean into it. Lean
Lean
into the
into the
poetry.
poetry, yeah. Like I've often thought, like I don't imagine I'm going to get invited to go on Joe Rogan anytime soon, but I would do it, right? I think, even though I would feel very conflicted about it because there's much about him that I really don't like, but I would appreciate the opportunity to speak to those men and talk about emotional health, and that is something I'd want to do, because I do think they're closer, than we maybe give them credit for. Um, to I'd like to think, maybe I'm being optimistic, but some
Well,
kind
no,
of emotional awakening.
I like that, and I think we need, if not optimism, hopefulness,
Yeah,
because the
possibility.
opposite is, yeah,
Yeah, like
exactly.
and it won't happen like overnight to like 100,000 young men. It will happen one at a time, and so it your hope is you reach the person who's really close, and then that helps the next person, make
Well,
that journey.
maybe you can be the mythical, poetic Joe Rogan of
The
the
Joe
left that
Rogan of the
everybody's looking
left.
for.
No, well, that's the thing. I wouldn't be faithful enough to the left, unfortunately. So,
um, Finally, the last thing I wanted to, and if you have anything yourself, I love hearing what artists most love about their work, but your stuff really shines through. I loved that your section that was the most explicitly spiritual and religious
yeah,
was entitled Haunted and Exhausted, and I feel that that is so many of us
yeah,
like when I read that, I was like, oh man, like that was the first section of the book when I got the arc from the publisher.
mhm,
That was the first section I read, because I mean, haunted and exhausted, those of us who are still believers, like identifying as a faithful person, believer, whatever you want to call it, like the way that so many think, like where we came from versus where we are, it's hard. And I feel like haunted and exhausted as somebody who is seeking to live in light of a generous, good God,
mhm,
if that's what we are purporting out there. Like haunted and exhausted, I feel like are the very best words you could have
Yeah,
used.
I think it's the millennial spiritual experiences to be haunted and
Yes.
exhausted.
Should get that tattooed, haunted and
Yeah,
exhausted.
I think the haunting to me implies both the kind of church hurt and religious trauma that haunts us, but also the real good things that we like. I think so many of the people that have deconstructed and have made progressed forward in their faith in that regard are haunted by the things that they were actually told about Jesus, like to love your neighbor, and like it's those
And the
things.
people who taught
Yeah.
them to love, they are still like with their mouths saying, "Oh, we need to be like Jesus," but then their lives, you're like,
Yes. Yes.
"What are we? How?
But
How?"
I still feel haunted by the Holy Spirit. Like I still feel haunted by this man from Galilee, and like I can't like let go of um every good thing I learned, and every good thing, those things still shape my values and my beliefs still. Like I don't really like talking about what I believe and what I don't in terms of doctrine, but um I still subscribe to many of those things, and I found more material for that chapter than I probably did any of the others. Like we cut out an awful lot because it was too big.
I thought your poem "A Little Faith" was just, I feel like many of our, like, if there was like one poem that
Yeah.
I feel like our listeners and our audience and the people who we rub shoulders with in the various spheres and outlets and whatnot, I thought "A Little Faith" was just, that was it.
Mm. Yeah, that was one of the last to be added to the book. I wanted something that kind of summed up where I was at in that moment in time, and yeah.
Is that a print? I haven't
Uh,
exhaustively gone through your
no,
website.
everything that's brand new is not available as a print. Um,
Okay.
uh, is part of my agreement with the publisher. It's like
Aha.
I can't
Yes.
have every poem available. So
Totally.
80% of the book is new, and
Okay.
so
Nice.
yes, it's totally brand new, which is wonderful. But I can't sell the prints of the new things um,
Well, whenever
because they're going to
the
be in a book. But
the timer is up, I vote for that one.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
a great
I
one.
can do some of them, so that's good. So it's good. I'm kind of waiting for people to. I'm allowed to do like 10% or something. So like
Okay.
I'm waiting for people to read the book and see what really connects with people out of the
I'll
new
pull
things.
my lever. I'll
Okay,
put
that
my
your
vote in
vote
for
is
"A
for a
Little
little
Faith."
faith. Yeah. Okay.
Anything else in particular? Like, a lot of our audience does, a lot of them came from faith and a lot of them still are in there to some degree,
Yep.
but do you have any, not any, poems you want to have, but like, what would your encouragement or words be to the people who are on that journey who are maybe having a little bit of a harder time?
Um. Well, there are things in there for you as well. Like there's a poem called "Fuck Your Starry Sky," which is about a friend of mine that died and died very suddenly. Uh, he was a year or two younger than me, um, left a wife and a kid.
Mm.
And I, the day he died, I went outside to just sit with my thoughts, and it was the most beautiful starry sky that I'd seen. And I think there would have been a point in my life where I would have been like, oh, this is God speaking to me, and this is, like reassuring. And I was at the point where I was just like, fuck your starry sky. I don't want, I want you to split the sky open and show up and do something imminent, not just transcendent. Like I want something imminent and powerful, and um and then I relate that to Thomas saying, telling Jesus that I want to touch your scar, um, to believe, and that's kind of what I So yes, there's definitely things in there for the person that is struggling. There's a poem called "I Still Believe in Miracles," which is about struggling with believing in miracles. There's a poem called "Inerrancy," which
I
is
enjoyed that one quite a
yeah,
bit.
yeah. That's one of my favorites. My favorites to read. It's very. It's, the language of it is really
Because I
nice to read.
think this is just purely personal. Like I very much identify with the way you described your own journey. Like, and it was primarily my mom gave me a lot of very good tools, and I grew up very much on the low end of the economic spectrum in America with these systems that are very intense. So like I saw, like, I didn't identify with like the super privileged white bubble, even though obviously like there was some privilege, but like both my parents worked and we barely got by a lot. And I
Yep.
saw a lot of people who were our physical neighbors and the people around in communities as like, these people obviously have dignity. Like, why? Like, I didn't have to be sold on the dignity of poor people or
Yeah.
minorities or things like that. But, and tying this back to like, inerrancy was probably like, and I didn't even have to really wrestle with it that much when I honestly looked at it. But that was probably one of the harder things where I was like, oh, like I really honestly, and maybe I'm looking through rose colored glasses, like I think the reason I was taught the way I taught, the people probably meant well, but I don't really like the way that I was taught to view the Bible. I think people taught me that way because they meant well and had high views and blah, blah, blah. But I think a lot of that, and we've talked about that on the show with several guests from various disciplines, like making the Bible something it's not is very damaging for people, especially when they realize, hey, like this is what we were taught, and this is clearly not the case. Like, what now?
Yeah. I definitely wanted to express some of that in that poem, and so the first line of that poem is, "I keep the canon of Psalms incomplete," and basically saying I can be spoken to through anything, and anything can speak to me as powerfully as Scripture can, and um, that's okay. Like it's actually more than okay. It's actually a better way to live.
Absolutely. Well, I'm I appreciated your work for a while, and I'm very excited for
Hmm.
a Rebellion of Care to kind of
Thank
be
you.
out there in the
I
world.
can't wait to.
I learned a couple weeks ago because I was going to do it. I'll still probably reach out to the publisher to see if we can get a couple of copies to give away for listeners and
Yes.
do promotions or what have you. But I was going to, and my wife's like, no, like I pre-ordered, I got the signed thing. So we already have at least one signed
Thank you.
copy coming for ours. Very excited for it. I know a number of my friends have as well. So I'm just excited for this to come out.
Yeah. Me too. Me too. I can't wait for people to get in their hands. I've done many creative things over the course of my life and released lots of things, albums, songs, poems, and all sorts of things. And I am most proud of this piece of work. So, this is. I did my best. Like, if you like it, I don't know, but this is like my best shot. This is kind of the best I could do. So yeah, I'm pleased with it artistically, and I think it's arriving in the world, unfortunately, at a very prescient moment. So,
Yeah, I
um,
was listening to another podcast earlier this week. I didn't get to do as much like take as many notes as I wanted, but I also like coming to conversations like curious and interested, like you're
yes,
somebody whose work I've engaged with for a while, so it's not like the publisher's like, "Hey, talk to our talk to our author," and I have to be like, tell me about the thing you wrote." So I've enjoyed this a lot, but yeah, I just totally lost my train of thought right there. I'm exhausted today, and
it's
I
late.
maybe will cut that out because I had a point, but now it's gone.
Well, you weren't you going to ask me about what I've been reading
Here
and
we are. No,
yeah,
this is before we let you go, and we can do plugs at the very end. But David, our one segment here, substance shoutouts. What have you been watching,
yeah.
reading, listening to, engaging with?
Mhm.
Give us a couple of things that you've either found just edifying, enjoyable, interesting, distracting, perhaps,
Yeah.
with the times we live in.
One book I read recently that there are a couple of books that I read right at the beginning of the year that I absolutely adored and I thought were both masterpieces. One was James by Percival Everett, which I think has gone on. Maybe it won
Cannot wait to read that.
I think did it win the Booker Prize or the something?
It has won a lot of things.
Yes,
I don't know.
it's amazing. And also Demon Copperhead I read, which I was a little late to, but again an absolute masterpiece. And so that kind of ruined me for fiction for a little bit because I kind of would have to read something that was as good as those, and there just isn't many books as good as those. So what I'm reading right now, which I'm really enjoying, is a book called We Tell Ourselves Stories by Alissa Wilkinson, and it is about the life of Joan Didion and particularly her engagement with Hollywood and the storytelling of Hollywood. And she was a film critic herself, and lived in adjacent to the Hollywood world and talked about it a lot, and the intersection between Hollywood and politics. And I'm also I'm a Joan Didion stan. So I'm really enjoying that book by Alissa Wilkinson. In terms of watching, I just finished Andor, the Star Wars show.
Season 2, yeah.
Season 2. And season 1 was very, very influential for my book. It really made all that rebellion stuff. And there's one of the chapters even comes from that, like the tree remembers what the axe forgets is an old African proverb, but it's quoted in that show. And so as I was writing this book, like it really inspired a lot of the rebellious elements of that show. So to see it wrapped up so well, in the second season, I thought the second season was as good as the first. It's an absolute marvel of a show. Like I cannot believe it exists. This kind of politically rebellious show that's like in the Star Wars universe owned by Disney. Like it makes no sense, but it really is an incredibly written show. Like one of the best written shows I've watched. It was so good. So
I love that. I love that. I need to catch up with season 2 of Andor. I haven't made time for that yet.
It's so good.
And listeners, I did not set him up, and I loved hearing your shout out. So Alissa Wilkinson's been somebody I've known for several years, and
oh wow, I didn't know that.
A few months ago, we had her back on for this book. Since she's been at the Times, they're very tight with what they allow her to do, like press wise.
Wow.
So I haven't been able to talk to her for a while. But then when she got the book, I was like, yes, like let's get her back on for the book, and that was a great conversation. And Joan Didion is somebody that I've been curious about for a while, so that's kind of got me started on that.
I've followed her for a long time before when she was writing at Vox, I think she was, or somewhere like that. And I love her takes and I love her taste. She's a great writer, really good
I'll be
writer.
sure to let her know that independently, and I want to let
absolutely.
listeners know
I had no idea that you were her friend.
I love that.
Please say that I am a fan. I'm a fan of her work. Yeah.
I will say I haven't, and because we're recording some of these, we're batching, just to kind of catch back up. I haven't read and watched a ton of new stuff since the last time we recorded, but I will say, listeners know one of the places that I'm involved with locally here, that's one of my favorite Kansas City local businesses, is the long-running independent theater Screenland Armor. They often will play classics along with the new stuff, and it's a movie I have loved for a long time, but getting to see it on the big screen, I recently saw RoboCop again, and just as powerful, just as funny, just as kind of biting. And I got to bring a friend of mine locally for his first viewing, and that was a delight.
I feel like my generation is the one that saw RoboCop way too early in their lives.
Yeah, we definitely say
like I
209 blowing that guy to pieces.
Like when the boardroom, when they bring in the robot to the boardroom, he just annihilates the
Just
entire
eviscerates
room.
him, yeah.
And like, you know, seeing that as, you know, probably like a tween, you know, like I thought it was
Yeah,
probably 12 or 13 or something, and it's an image that stuck with me. The destruction of the
definitely.
boardroom is something I can jive with.
No,
It printed on
it
my
was a
mind.
blast. And that's one, like, I've had this conversation with my wife a few times. Like, I think there is power in just what you said, like seeing things just a little bit too young. Like, I don't want to throw my kids in the deep end too far, but there are a few things that I'm
Yeah,
just really excited about where maybe like just right before, like,
yeah,
and then kind of
yeah.
shepherding them through that. But RoboCop's one I can't wait. But yeah, seeing that on the big screen was great. Um, that was just a wonderful time. So that's what I've got. I still haven't finished any of the books. I started like 2 or 3 more books. I need to be finishing more books is what
Yeah.
I need to do.
Well, thank you. You took the time to read mine. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, David. I like I said, genuinely appreciate your time a lot with somebody who's got a book out, got a lot of things, family, got a home, you got a farm that you
Yeah,
got in the
yeah.
backyard to tend, and appreciate you spending time with us. I will have links for the book in the show notes and for Substack, Instagram. Is there anything else you wanna any
Uh,
particular thing you want to put
um,
on folks' radar?
your book's out July 15th. I would love it if you bought it from your indie bookstore,
Yes,
from
yes,
your
yes.
area where you live. But if you want to buy it from my indie bookstore, if you'd like a signed copy, you can do that. It's Malaprops in Asheville. My Substack, David Gate Substack, Instagram, David Gate Poet, and my website. If there's any of the poems that you like or love, and you would like a handmade version of that, then I sell those there. So that's davidgatepoet.com. So they're all the ways you can engage.
We'll have that there. Yeah, support artists you like and you love. Well, David, you're always welcome back. I know you're going to be busy, but if you're a
Thank you.
movie guy, our substantive cinema episodes are
I
big
would
here.
love to come and talk about some movies. Yeah,
If
I
there's
like
a
to nerd
movie
out
that
about it.
you love that means a lot to you or has ideas that you find interesting to
I would
engage
love
with
to talk
you.
about Sinners. I don't know if you've spoken about
So
Sinners yet.
we often don't chase new stuff. We do
Okay,
talk about new stuff sometimes, but Sinners I was going to let sit for
see
maybe a
where it
year or
sits in the
so.
culture. Yeah,
Well, not even just that, but like if you type in Sinners to whatever podcatcher you have, you're going to find 1,000 things. And not that, oh, I want to be so unique, because there's obviously substance there, but I just feel like the conversation on Sinners is just flooded. But it was incredible. I don't think I've shouted that out yet. Sinners, obviously,
yeah,
it even outgrossed Thunderbolts
yeah,
one day over the weekend. It didn't beat it, but it's creeping up there to $250 million
yep,
just in the US
yep,
for an original
yep.
R-rated horror movie, which is
It,
incredible.
it's because it is an incredible movie. It really, you know, it's one that you need to see on the big screen if you can. I think.
I
I
don't want
really,
to say anything about it explicitly because I've had a few people, very sadly, who had the big scene spoiled for them. But that one scene in the middle of the movie, I've seen thousands of films and I've never seen anything like that exactly. And
no, it's
it
so
is both a
brave.
wonderfully written movie, but like genuinely fresh.
Yeah, it's so brave because there's an element of almost breaking the fourth wall in it, right? Like where they,
Yeah, that one scene is
yeah,
just
yeah.
so unique.
It's not breaking the fourth wall, but like it almost is. Like it definitely pulls you out of.
Only in a movie could you
Yeah,
do what
yeah,
that did.
yes,
And if a lesser talented
yes,
set of artists did
yes.
it, you'd be like, I'm going to walk out of this
No,
theater.
it could so easily be corny, but it is not corny in the slightest. It's the exact opposite. It's incredibly powerful, and so yeah, I'm amazed at what they achieved with that movie. It's a
Oh, actually,
phenomenal.
this could be a shout out. I almost never do this at this stage of my life. After I saw Sinners, I've been listening to the soundtrack a lot
Yes,
on Spotify. Like
same.
the music was legitimately great. And I almost exclusively listen to podcasts and audiobooks and my favorite rock and rap albums over and over and over.
Yep.
So I started listening. So the Sinner soundtrack, I guess,
Are
can
you
go on the shout
listening
outs
to the
list.
score or the soundtrack? Are you listening to?
Mm,
Does it have vocals on? Does it have? Is it
Yes.
songs? Yeah. Okay, so that's the soundtrack. Yeah. So yours in the soundtrack. So there's a
Right. Oh,
score which is just
okay.
Ludwig Göransson's
Ludwig. Yeah. I feel like
uh,
some of Ludwig's stuff
score.
is on it, but definitely the one song in that scene is on there too. So
Yep.
maybe
Yep.
that's the soundtrack.
And there's a James Blake song on there which I love as well. So that's on the soundtrack.
And if you see Sinners, which you should most of the times, maybe not all the times, but if you see Sinners, stay through the credits.
Yes, for sure.
Well, David, yeah, you're welcome back. We can
Thank
find
you.
a movie to talk about sometime down the
I
road.
would
But yeah,
love that. I love
buy the
yapping.
book. I love it too. This is when you have grown kids, so it's easy.
Yeah, it's easier. It is.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to having you back
Thank
then.
you. Thank you. I would like to become a friend of the podcast, not just the occasional person, but a friend of your community.
Well, you're in.
Thank you.
Hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. Love talking with David, and I will give you guys a behind the scenes look if you are still listening after. I mean, this is at the beginning, but I know not everybody listens to the show all the way in. That's fine. But if you do, I'll give you a little teaser here. We are already talking about David's return to the show. We had such a good time. And I was like, hey, if you want to ever come back for a substantive cinema, let me know. I sent him our prospective episode list that any listeners who are on Letterboxd, I've gotten a lot of feedback on that list from various people. They've added titles to that list. So if you ever want to do that, just check out the Letterboxd list. But I sent that to him and he got very excited about one title in particular that I was delighted that he highlighted. So I don't know exactly when he's going to be back, but sometime in the coming months, David Gate will return, teaser, for In Bruges. A very darkly funny, very funny, but very dark film that I love very much. I love introducing that to. When I was younger or closer to when that came out, I showed that to people all the time, and I loved seeing their reaction. It's edgy, but it's got a good heart, and I'm might be one of the more divisive potentially titles we've picked, but it's one that I love, and I'm excited to have David come back at some point in the future in the coming months. Obviously, many of you probably already have the book on pre-order, but if you don't, you can go to bookshop.org. Gonna have that link in the show notes, or tell your local bookstore to put it on the shelf. If you have a great library system where you can suggest things to be added to the collection, tell the library to purchase some copies so that the people in your community can see it. So love this book, excited for its launch, and just genuinely, I wish it was, like we said, I wish it was launching to a different world, but we are in the world we are in, and I think this book will be a massive encouragement to many. As always, the best way to support this show is to listen and tell people with your words, preferably. But you can message your friends and family, share it on your Slacks, Discord, social media, what have you. If you do, tag us. We will always interact when we can. And we appreciate that very much. If you want to give us a couple of bucks, if you have a couple of bucks in this economy, I understand that things are tight, but if you have a couple bucks and want to say thanks and encourage us to keep going, you can do that on Cash App at $the Substance Pod. And we appreciate everybody who does that as well. Next week, we will be back with another feed drop. Like we're doing like feed drop July here. Other than this episode with David. And next week, we will be returning to the Movies and Us world. A little while ago, we had Jen and Sarah on for Columbus, Substantive Cinema. And next week, we're going to be doing a feed drop, one of my conversations with them, and that was on Bong Joon-ho's Memories of Murder. That was a great conversation. It was a great movie. It was a first watch for me when I talked with them about it. But really good movie, and that's what we got for you next week. So until then, I have been your host, Philip Marinello, and we will see you next time on The Substance.